The first necessary step in overcoming any kind of pain we have, be it physical, mental, spiritual, or whatever it is to acknowledge that it exists. Because if you don't acknowledge the pain that you're in, and you live in a state of denying that very pain, you're not going to take the necessary steps in order to heal from it. Now, at first glance, saying this, it might seem obvious, like obviously you have to acknowledge that your pain exists in order to heal from it. But if you look around, maybe at yourself as well, and especially a lot of the ways other people function, is that we don't acknowledge our pain. We live in a state of denial of it. We would rather turn our heads away from the pain than to face the reality of the fact that it exists. Now, this presents itself in many different examples of, you think of grief of a loved one dying and acting like you're fine, acting like it doesn't really bother you. Oh, they're in a better place now. And you're trying to work with the pain, but really what it is you feel like you can't handle the pain. So you're kind of turning your head away from it and not processing those feelings within you. Or you and your partner break up, or they leave you, or whatever happens, and you act like you're fine. You go right back out into dating. Oh, I don't miss them. I'm better off without them. Screw them. It's good that we broke up. Meanwhile, you're broken inside, but you feel like you can't handle that pain. So what you do is you live in a reality where that pain doesn't exist. You deny it. You pretend it's not there. And there's all sorts of pain, like you're angry, frustrated, depressed. Whatever it is, whatever the pain is, so many of us live as though it doesn't exist because we feel that it's too painful to accept the fact and the reality that it is there. Now, an example I have of this is recently I sprained my big toe. And I didn't want to have a sprained big toe because I'm going to be in Sedona at the end of the month doing a bunch of hiking, and I don't want a sprained big toe when I'm going to be going hiking soon, because it limits the ability that you can walk, and it's painful to walk and stuff. So a couple weeks ago, I started feeling this pain come on where I'd walk and it hurts to bend my big toe up. And I started getting kind of anxious, oh my God, I have a trip planned at the end of this month. I can't be having a sprained toe and not being able to walk because walking really hurt me. So what I did was I denied the fact that my toe hurt. I said, oh, it's fine, it'll go away. And I just kept walking through the pain. I kept just pushing through it with my normal stride because of the pain, I felt inclined to limp. But I was forcing myself to keep walking normally and just push through it. And I didn't want to accept the fact that my toe hurt because that went against my plans for the future to go hiking in Sedona, you know what I'm saying? So eventually it got to the point where me pretending I wasn't feeling that pain and denying the reality of that pain, it made it worse. It made it get worse. It got to the point where I couldn't deny it. And I started getting more anxious because it's going against that image I have of the future of hiking, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, no, I can't have a sprained toe. I have plans to hike. And I was denying it. And then it got to the point a little over a week ago where I said, okay, you know what? My toe is obviously messed up right now, and I need to tend to it. I need to give it love. I need to acknowledge the fact that my toe isn't okay. Rather than pretending it's fine and pushing through it, I need to cut the BS and acknowledge the fact that my toe isn't doing really well. So what I did is I did some research and I found out, some kind of diagnostic stuff of what could be going on, and ended up getting athletic tape and learned how to tape it in a particular way so that it couldn't bend up, and I started caring for it. I started giving it my attention. For a short story, I started giving it love, giving it attention, and acknowledging that something was wrong with it. And lo and behold, a little over a week later, and the toe is completely fine. And what it required for it to get better was me to acknowledge that it wasn't okay. What it requires for you to get better is to acknowledge that you're not okay. I did this coaching session a couple weeks ago, and the lady was talking about the bias around therapy. And I'm not saying I'm a therapist, but the whole idea of seeking help, of coming out and saying, hey, I'm not okay, can you help me? Essentially, you could call it the student mentality, where we don't want to show up. I mean, obviously not all of us, but there's this kind of overarching bias, you must know, of we don't want to show up in a feeling of lack. We don't want to show up and say, I'm hurting, I need help. Can you help me? I mean, physical health is one thing, but it more so presents itself when it comes to our mental health. We don't want to go out and, I'm depressed, I'm not well, I have childhood trauma, I have this, I have that. We don't want to come up like out front and say that and get help. There's this bias against it. We feel like we have to have it all figured out. We feel like we shouldn't need to get help from the outside. And what me and this lady were talking about is that it's not, we were talking about that bias, that there's nothing wrong with seeking help. And it's the very seeking of the help which has directly to do with admitting that something needs to be worked on. And that admitting that something needs to be worked on is the first step in order to work on it. Because you can't help somebody, you can't help yourself if you're not willing to admit that you need help. And I have a lot of people in my life that are denying the fact that something needs to be worked on within them. They're going around saying the world is a horrible place and everybody's out to get them and it's all rotten and cruel and cold and bitter. But they're fine. They're fine. But what they're telling me about reality reflects something differently. What they're saying about the world is showing that the way that they're processing life, their relationship with life, is not healthy. And I think a lot of it has to do with being able to swallow your pride and realize that you need to work on yourself. A lot of us don't want to do that. A lot of us want to show up to the occasion equipped and knowing what to do and having all our ducks in a row or whatever and having it all together. But a lot of us, that's not the case. For a majority of our life, we're going to be working on ourselves. We're going to be developing ourselves. And that journey of healing can only really get serious and actually start to take place when you put the BS aside, you stop playing make-believe, you stop playing pretend, and you admit that you need to work on yourself. You admit that you need healing. You know, that story I shared of my sprained toe, that's a huge example of not only our mental health, but our physical health. We can deny it. You feel like a pain in your stomach and you're like, oh, whatever. And then come to find out you have like stomach cancer or something. Now, if you were to have acted on that pain initially and realized, this doesn't feel right, maybe I should work on this, maybe I should see what this is all about, you would have been able to treat it in an earlier stage. But now that it's like compounded and gotten worse, you feel forced to go. You feel like, damn, I need to go and get this checked out because it's gotten really bad. Kind of like me with my sprained big toe. And now it's at a stage where it's going to take a lot of work and it might not even be able to be fully recovered. You know, and a couple years ago, or like a year ago, I had a collapsed lung. You know what I'm saying? I'm sorry, my cat bumped my thing. I remember I was like at work and I was doing I was working and I felt this like pop in my chest. I was like, oh, that was weird. And it kind of felt like pain. You know what I'm saying? And then it got to the point where when I'd bend over, I felt like air moving up and down my back. It was a very strange feeling that I'd never felt before. And it got to the point I was like, this does not feel right. I tried once again to deny it, to pretend that I'm not feeling this weird feeling. Whatever, I don't, you know what I mean? It's not a big deal. It'll go away. It'll resolve itself. That's a huge one right there. It'll resolve itself. It often does not resolve itself. You need to give it your attention. But I was doing that with my lung. Oh, it'll take care of itself. And then, you know, I think it was like 2 days later, I realized like this does not feel right, you know? So what I thought I was just like bloated or something. I thought it was this like trapped wind or whatever it's called. So I go to the doctor and I get an x-ray and they say, hey, young man, you have a collapsed lung. You need to go to the ER. This can be really serious. Oh, okay. So when I take it seriously, when I actually show up and sort of try to diagnose what's going on, it reveals that something serious was going on. And if I were to have ignored it, it could have gotten a lot worse. And that's the case a lot of the time, where the pain that we ignore, the pain that we don't want to be there, we try to go about it by ignoring it. Oh, it'll take care of itself. Out of sight, out of mind. We kind of look at like all our pain, like you remember being a little kid and you plug your ears and you're like, la 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 la, I can't hear you, I can't see you. That's what we do with a lot of our pain. That's what we do with a lot of our hardships in life, is we pretend that they're not there. I can't see you, la 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 la. You know what I'm saying? We act like it doesn't bother us. We act like it doesn't exist. All the while, it's just kind of sitting inside of us, you know? And when the pain comes up, I've talked about this a lot on my channel, when the pain comes up, we stuff it back down. The very act of stiffening up and acting bigger than it and not letting it come out and not letting yourself, like when you feel yourself starting to cry, you kind of like get all weird and tense and try to push it away and act like you're fine. All you're doing by doing that is stuffing it down inside you for later. The very expression of that grief, of that pain, is it on its way out. In the very same way that when you're sick, all the symptoms you feel, most of those symptoms are associated with your body healing. What you feel when you have a cold is your body fighting off the cold. When you think of your partner that left you, or your relative or pet that passed away, and you feel that uprising wave of grief, that is your body healing. And it's only doing a disservice to you to push it back down inside you, because all you're doing is postponing your healing journey. Me pretending I'm not feeling pain in my foot, all I'm doing is putting off the healing, because I'm literally making it worse by acting like everything's fine, everything's fine. You know that picture of that kid, I think it was like from the Simpsons or whatever, he's like on the bus and like everything's on fire, or no, it's like a different picture, but the whole place is on fire and it's like everything is okay, everything is happy, you know, I'm fine. That's what a lot of us do. The world is crashing down in flames around us. Our social life, our mental health, our physical health is crashing, but we're living in a state of dissonance from it. We're not admitting that something's wrong. We're afraid to admit that something's wrong, because when you admit that something's wrong, it validates a different reality than the one you want to be living in. Let's say you want to be a professional skier, and you're working on becoming a professional skier, and then you get in an accident and you become paralyzed from the waist down and you can't walk. You need to admit that that's the new reality, or else the magnitude of dissonance between where you are and where you wish you were is going to be maddening. And this is the case with a lot of us. That me sharing my sprained toe story. There was a dissonance between Devon with a sprained toe and Devon hiking in Sedona at the end of the month. And I didn't want to admit that dissonance. I didn't want to admit that my toe hurts and I can't really walk right now and I need to work on healing it. And the funny thing is, acknowledging that my toe needs my attention and my care and to be acknowledged is what allowed it to heal exponentially faster. You know, and this is the case like with seeking help, whether that be like a physical trainer, or a coach, or a therapist, or a psychologist. Seeking help, or just talking to a friend, reaching out and saying, "Hey man, can we talk? Can we talk for a minute?" Being willing to open up, being willing to be vulnerable and admit that you're not perfect and that you need assistance. By admitting that you need help, you're taking the first necessary step in healing from that. I remember years ago, I had cats. I still have cats, but I had like one less cat or whatever it was. And they had fleas. They had like a minor flea problem. And I said, oh, I was young at the time, you know, I wasn't like mature, you know. And I was like, oh, it'll take care of itself, whatever, it's no big deal. And then it started getting worse, and I was like, oh, it'll take care of itself, it's no big deal. And then it started getting really bad, where they're crawling on me in my bed and biting me, and they're all through the house, and my cats are constantly scratching at themselves and biting and kicking, and it got really bad. But I was living in this state of denial. Believe it or not, I was actually living in a state of sort of spiritual bypassing. Because at the time, I was just getting involved with spiritual teachings and really getting deep into that world of karma and destiny, and it's all meant to be, and it's all one, and it's all perfect, and all this stuff, you know? And so what the way that I was relating to the flea situation was, it's meant to be. It'll go away on its own when God intends for it to go away. I don't need to do anything because there is no me for there to do anything. And I was really out there. And I was spiritually bypassing the situation. And so it got to the point where it was so bad that we couldn't live in the house anymore. We couldn't live there anymore because it was so intense. And it got to the point where my brother brought to my attention that this needs to be worked on. This needs to be taken care of. I'm sorry, I had to get my cat out of the room. But it got to the point where my brother brought to my attention that this needs to be taken care of. And what's funny is, once I actually acknowledged that there was a problem, I began taking the necessary steps to take care of it. Because how are you going to solve a problem if you aren't aware that there is a problem? How are you going to eradicate the problem if you don't even admit that there is one? You know, and it's just all these examples that have manifested themselves in my personal life that have shown me that in order to heal, you need to be willing to admit that there's healing that needs to take place. You know? So when you feel anger, when you feel grief, when you feel depression, when you feel confusion, not knowing the way, you know, when you feel lost, when you feel any sort of negative emotion, when you feel like your body needs healing, when you feel like you need help in some area of your life, don't deny that calling. Because that very expression of that emotion is your body, a deeper, wiser part of your body, asking for help. It's saying, something's not right, I need help. Something's not right, I need guidance. And our macho egos don't want to admit that something's wrong. We don't want to live in the reality where we're not showing up perfectly. We want to act like we got it all together. Oh, I'm fine. Oh, it's not a big deal. Oh, this pain and frustration and nihilism and depression, oh, it's no big deal. It's whatever. I'm going to act like I got it all together. And so your friend sees you and they're like, hey man, are you okay? Like, you seem off. And you're like, yeah, everything's fine. Meanwhile, your inner reality is crumbling, you know? And it's all taking place because of your denial to admit that something's wrong. You know, there's a close family member in my life that lives in this reality of denying the existence of anything being wrong with what they do. They don't do anything wrong. It's everybody else that does something wrong. You did me wrong. You did me wrong. You wronged me. You wronged me. It's the world's fault, not his fault. And what this has resulted in is everybody on the outside sort of casting him away, sort of cutting ties with any sort of relationship that they had with him. And this is because of his refusal to admit that his behaviors are what is responsible for the state of his relationships and the state of his life. He's living in an intense state of denial, of denying that he's ever done something wrong. And I could only imagine that the reason he's living in that state of denial is because of the pain that it would induce to admit that he's at fault for why all these relationships have fallen apart. He's refusing to admit that his actions have consequences, and that the state of his life and his relationships with others and the world itself are the consequences of his actions. It's a complete refusal to admit that. And so what's happened is everybody has sort of moved away from him. And what does he do? How does he respond to that? He says, well, screw you guys then. You're not going to talk to me. Well, screw you. I don't need you anyway. It's a victim mentality. Once again, I've been wronged. It's all your guys' fault. You guys are at fault. I'm doing everything perfectly. You guys are the ones that need help. I've done everything just right. You know? And then this person has the audacity to ask me, I'm searching really hard for happiness. You know? And it comes to my mind, well, where are you looking for it? How are you thinking? How are you treating yourself? How are you treating others? You know, I'm kind of going on for a rant here, but the idea is that the longer you live in a world of denial of your pain, the longer you're going to postpone your healing journey. And healing begins when you admit that there's healing that needs to take place. And it's not fun. It's not fun to admit that, because that healing may go against the whole legacy that you have of who you are. You know what I mean? Like a big macho ego kind of person having to admit that they're very insecure and they're not very confident and they think they're not good looking and they don't even like themselves. That truth of how their heart feels, that inner truth, goes completely against the grain of the egoic persona that they're wearing and representing to everybody around them. You know, me having the sprained big toe, having to admit, okay, my toe's messed up, I need to get this worked on. That went against the legacy, the story I had of wanting to be this person who can hike this summer. You know, I had to essentially accept the reality that I may not be able to hike as much or as long as I was intending on hiking this summer. And see, what's beautiful in the way that this works is that when you admit it, that's when the healing begins. And the longer you deny it, the worse it's going to get. If you've been struggling with grief over something for years now, it's worth asking yourself the question, am I denying how bad it hurts? Do I push it away? Do I give that grief the time of day? Do I acknowledge that grief with as much presence and attention as it deserves? You know, like you have an amazing relationship with somebody, and then through just the happenings of life, you and that person drift away and fall apart and you break up. And then you act like, I've done this before too, you act like you don't like them and they're a bad person and it was all nonsense and it was never true. And all, you know how you kind of spin it on its head and talk down on everything now that you're not together? That's not true. That's not necessarily true. What you're doing is you're shifting the energy where you hate them, and it's a defense mechanism for your heart. Because if you were to accept the reality that you guys had a really good and amazing experience in the beginning, that would be harder for you to process the fact that you're no longer together, if you can hear that. Where it's easier when you and somebody break up to hate them than it is to still honor and love and respect and appreciate the journey that you and that person shared in the very beginning before things got rough. Do you see what I'm saying there? We're like, I've done it. I did it with my past relationship situation where I created this energy of frustration and screw you. But that's not true, because if I look back on how I felt and how I acted and how things were in the beginning, it was beautiful, it was amazing, it was fun, it was exciting. So why is that reality not true now that we're not together? Just because we're not together doesn't mean I need to invalidate the beauty of this experience beforehand. You know, and that way of, screw my ex. That is a form of denial. It's a form of protecting your heart through denial, through acting like you don't care anymore, acting like it wasn't beautiful. But see, as time goes on and as you mature and as you come into a place of emotional acceptance and mental, physical, and spiritual well-being, you'll begin to appreciate those beautiful times you had with people rather than protecting your heart from the grief of being separated from them by acting cold and bitter towards them. That is not healing. I mean, it's part of the grief cycle. You know how there's like the denial, acceptance, anger. You know, there's like a stages of grief. Anger is part of it, most definitely. But when you come full circle, you begin to realize the beauty of the situation. And that healing doesn't come through screw them. Healing doesn't come through pretending you don't have healing to do. Healing comes through, when you're sitting there and you miss your ex or you miss your loved one that's passed away or whatever it is, you sit there and you say, damn, man, I miss them. I wish they were still here. Rather than like getting all stiff and acting like it doesn't bother you and all this stuff. We play pretend. We don't respect ourselves enough to admit that we are in pain and that we need help and assistance. You see it of how people are living this silent battle. You see somebody, hey, how you doing? And they're like, good, and they smile at you. Meanwhile, they're suffering for they're battling for their life inside. It's deep stuff. And a lot of this comes through not only not knowing the way to healing, which is where assistance and counseling and help comes in, but also not being able to admit or not wanting to admit that healing needs to take place. We would rather pretend it's not there because out of sight, out of mind, la la la, I can't hear you, than admit the reality of, damn man, I'm not doing too well inside and I need to figure out how to heal this. And see, your pain, there's a certain level of you, there's a certain aspect or quality of you that opens when you're in pain. Whether it's physical pain or psychological pain, it really doesn't matter. When there's that pain present, you're willing once and for all, once that pain grows to a certain extent, you're willing to do what needs to be done to heal it. Because now the pain is so present and so available and unavoidable that you realize, shit, man, I can't pretend this isn't here anymore. I need to move through this. Now see, pain plus curiosity is how you get to healing. Pain plus lack of curiosity is what results in a bitter, avoidant person living in denial. But having that it's like an inner child. It's this inner quality of curiosity that is saying, how do I move through this pain? What can I do to get through this? What does this mean? What steps do I need to take? Who can help me? What is this? That curiosity is the light at the end of the tunnel that will lead you through the pain. It comes in admitting that something's wrong. That's really the essence of what I'm trying to say to you guys here, is that your pain, your healing comes not in spite of your pain, but through it. You heal by admitting that you need to heal. Now, like I said in the beginning, that seems obvious, but a lot of us don't live as though it's obvious. A lot of us push our pain away. A lot of us talk ourselves out of our pain. There's nothing wrong. I shouldn't be feeling this. One of my favorite lines that I used to use was, if I were more spiritual, I wouldn't feel X, Y, or Z. If I were more wise, I wouldn't have to, That's nonsense. To be spiritual, which is kind of just synonymous with being wise, with being holistic, with being a whole being, considering all the different facets of themselves, to be that kind of person means to acknowledge how you're feeling. To live in reality with how you're feeling. I've heard it said that if you don't live with reality, reality will eventually come to live with you. Now, let that land. Let that kind of sink in for a moment. If you don't live with the reality of things in every single moment is a reiteration of the reality that you're living in. As you begin to deny, as you begin to push away, as you begin to pretend and play make-believe, la la la, I can't hear you, you increase the dissonance. You're increasing the distance between you and reality. And eventually, reality will come to live with you. The pain will be unbearable, unavoidable, constant. The pain, the disease, the mental disease, the physical disease, whatever it is, whatever way it's manifesting itself for you, will become chronic and perhaps terminal the longer you avoid it. The longer you avoid your pain, the longer you're avoiding healing. When you go into the pain, you begin the process of healing. So I want to make that crystal clear for you guys that the pain that you're feeling is, first of all, okay. It's okay. But in order to move through that pain, in order to transform and transmute that pain into fuel for your transformation and your awakening, you need to be willing to accept that something needs to be worked on. Now, this could be in the form of getting a therapist, getting counseling, or getting a coach, or studying psychology, studying human psychology, familiarizing yourself with the pain that you're feeling. And all this comes from acknowledging that something's wrong, acknowledging that you need help. And there's nothing wrong, even saying that just then, it's like, you need help, or I need help. There's this negative connotation to it, as if you're not good enough, or you're broken because you need help. That's why so many of us avoid asking for help. That's why so many of us deny the existence of the pain that we feel, because we feel like we should have our shit together. We feel like we should have it all together. But the truth is, a lot of us don't, and a lot of us aren't willing to admit that we don't. So what I'm trying to emphasize in this video is the importance of that admission, the importance of admitting something's wrong. I know that when I feel down, when I feel sad, when I feel angry, when I feel lost, frustrated, hopeless, grieving, missing stuff from the past, or whatever it is, you want to know what I do? I acknowledge it and I allow it. I allow it. I let myself feel it. I sink into it and allow it to come up, because I've come to understand that the very presence of those emotions is them on their way out. And it would only be silly to push it back down inside me because I think I shouldn't be feeling it. Now, it's not fun to feel sad. It's not fun to feel frustrated and angry. It's not fun to be depressed. It's not fun to feel anxious and panicky. It's not fun to feel hopeless and like there's no meaning. But the trick is in allowing, because as you allow yourself to feel it, you're killing two birds with one stone. You're acknowledging that it's there, and you're allowing it to be there. And the very presence of it is it being transformed. In the same way the symptoms of your cold are your body fighting it, your body healing it. When you feel those symptoms of negativity, those symptoms of your pain, that is your body, mind, and soul transforming it. And it would only be silly to push it back down inside you so you can have some for later. So let it go. Allow it. Accept the fact that there's parts of you that aren't well, and realize that it's in accepting that the healing journey begins. Thank you all so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, consider liking and subscribing, because it really helps me out and I greatly appreciate it. So with that said, I'll see you all in the next video.